In today's video from the Weather Farm, we're monitoring two significant weather events that is going to change the weather for the United States in the week ahead. So let's dive right into the forecast and get you the information that you need to know. As we can see from our satellite imagery, we have an area of low pressure here that is spinning in the lower Ohio Valley that is continuing to bring rain. It will move towards the east coast during the day on our Thursday. We're still watching Hurricane Melissa out here in the Atlantic as she has made her way through the Bahamas and now setting her sights on Bermuda late Thursday night. It is continuing to move away and will pose no threat to the United States. And then out in the northwest, we're watching continued showers and storms as yet another system prepares to make its way onshore. So as we begin our Thursday, as I said, we have that area of low pressure that's still spinning showers across the Ohio Valley. The area of low pressure is centered across parts of northern Virginia, and it's going to spread a lot of rainfall into the northeast during our day Thursday as it continues to pull moisture off of the Atlantic Ocean. We do have a risk of severe weather associated with this low pressure system. Out across the Canadian provinces of Saskatchewan into Manitoba, we are watching snowfall, and that snowfall could accumulate in some of those higher elevations. But out west, we're watching mainly dry conditions for your Thursday. The Storm Prediction Center has gone ahead and highlighted parts of southern Pennsylvania, Delaware, into eastern Virginia for the threat of severe weather, primarily during the first half of the day into the early afternoon. After that low pressure system moves through, we do expect the severe risk to diminish by the time we get to our evening. And the primary threat with this storm is going to be a low chance of tornadoes, as we do have a lot of rotation in the atmosphere. There is some wind shear in the upper levels of the atmosphere. And that wind shear is going to provide the opportunity for a storm to possibly updraft and start rotating if the conditions are right. So we're going to continue to watch this for the threat of tornadoes on our Thursday. In terms of our radar, let's put everything into motion. We're going to watch those heavy rains move out of West Virginia into Philadelphia and then making their way to New York City. By the time we get to mid-afternoon, we have a large area of rain off the coast. There's the back edge of that rain making its way into western Pennsylvania overnight, and everything moves up into northern New England and into southern Canada by the time we wake up on our Friday morning. In terms of our precipitation, we're going to see the heaviest amounts across central and northern New York, where we could see 2 to 4 inches of rain, but all the way up through Maine, down through Boston, and through central PA and western PA, we could see 1 to 2 inches of rain. Lesser amounts as you get down towards Richmond and Delaware, generally ½ an inch or less. And as I mentioned, by the time we get to Friday morning, that system's going to be moving away. But if you notice here, we have those tight isobars. That's going to mean we're going to have a lot of wind as this system exits. Winds could gust 40 to 60 miles per hour by the time we wake up on our Friday morning. So on our Halloween, it is definitely going to be a windy day in the Northeast. And we're also watching yet another system beginning to make its way onshore into the Pacific Northwest. And this one's going to pack quite a punch as well, as the last 2 or 3 have, in terms of rainfall and snowfall for those higher elevations. But from coast to coast on our Friday morning, it is quiet and it is calm. A little chilly here as we have a trough that's digging in through the Great Lakes in the Ohio Valley. Scattered snow showers across North Dakota, but we could see temperatures here down into the 30s and 40s into parts of North Carolina. And what's really causing this is we have this dip in the jet stream here in the eastern half of the United States. That's allowed that cutoff low to kind of sit and spin, but it's eventually going to be kicked out into the northeast by the time we get to our Friday morning. We're going to watch yet another trough try to dig into the central plains. That's going to spark a little bit of instability here across the Ohio Valley, but it's really down along the Gulf Coast that we could see rainfall Saturday into Sunday. And then as we look out towards the west, we see a ridge starting to build across the Four Corners region. And as we get to Monday and to Tuesday of next week, our jet stream is basically zonal, west to east, with the real storm track being kept north of the Canadian border. And that's going to be the weather that we see most of next week. Nothing in the terms of severe weather, but really seasonal weather until we get to about Thursday when we watch a bigger trough begin to make its way onto the California west coast. That could be a signal of an overall pattern change for the United States by the time we get into the second week of November. So let's put it all into motion. Here's that rain Thursday moving into the northeast. Again, those snow showers across Saskatchewan into Manitoba, diving into the Dakotas early Friday morning. And yet another low pressure system making its way into British Columbia, Washington State, and Oregon with heavy amounts of rainfall for that part of the country. As we go to our Saturday, a little bit of instability here across Arkansas, but the main threat of rain is going to be across the southern states with the passage of that low pressure system. In terms of our temperatures for our Thursday, it's generally 50s and 60s across the central plains into the Ohio Valley. Where you have that rainfall into the northeast through Ohio and eastern Kentucky, temperatures a little bit cooler. Highs will only be in the upper 40s, even down into the mountains of northern Georgia. You're going to be in the low 50s for your highs. The real warmth across Florida into Texas, 70s and 80s. And out west across parts of Idaho and eastern Washington and Oregon, highs will be in the middle 50s. Going to our Friday, which is Halloween, a very important day for all the kids as they go out trick-or-treating. The forecast isn't that spooky across the United States. We're going to have a cooler part across the Dakotas, but it's normal this time of the year. It's nothing that we've not seen before. Temperatures are in the upper 30s as we see some snow showers making their way through the Dakotas, but generally 50s through the central tier of the United States, 70s and 80s across Texas, the Gulf Coast, and down through Florida. Even a little bit of warming across the Carolinas with highs in the 60s. Out across Southern California, you're in the 70s, even warming up into the 80s in the interior of California. And as we go into our Saturday, we're going to watch that next low pressure system kind of dive out into the Great Lakes and Ohio Valley, keeping temperatures here relatively cool with temperatures only in the mid-40s, pushing that cool air even down into the panhandle of Texas where we can see highs in the upper 50s. And out across the west coast for Washington State and Oregon, where you have that next system coming on shore, bringing that heavy rainfall, temperatures there will be kept down into the mid-50s for your Saturday. And after we go into the weekend, as I mentioned, we're going to have that area of rain here across the Gulf Coast. Not as intense as we talked about a couple days ago. We're going to watch yet another system make its way across the northern tier through the Great Lakes. Could bring some snow and rain, but remember from that jet stream is basically going to take storm tracks across the northern tier into Ontario, into the northeast. Really not coming down into the lower 48 throughout this entire week. And so we're going to have calm conditions, basically coast to coast. But as you saw there at the end of that last frame, as we get to our Thursday, that's when we think the pattern is going to change, and we could see a pretty significant storm making its way into the west coast by the time we get to Wednesday. And what's that going to do is it's going to make the west coast much cooler than it has been and build a ridge across the Central Plains into the eastern half of the United States, giving us that temperature flip and setting the stage up as we get to that second week of November for the possibility of severe weather here across the Central Plains into the northern Great Lakes. So let's look here at our temperature anomalies. And the thing I want you to notice is as we go through these maps here, we're really not seeing a lot of purples indicating areas of much below normal temperatures, and we're not really seeing a lot of strong reds, though we do see a few across Montana as we go into our Sunday. They do move into the Central Plains and lee side of the Rockies by the time we get to Monday and Tuesday. But as we get to the middle of the week and that next system begins to make its way on shore, we see a lot of warming across the Central Plains to the upper Great Lakes. This could bring record high temperatures to some locations by the middle and end of next week. It's still a week away. A lot can change with our forecast, but there are signs that we could see a big warm up across the central and eastern parts of the United States coming by the end of next week. As I mentioned, we have rainfall and precipitation falling across the northeast for our Thursday into early Friday morning. We'll have a little bit of rainfall across the southeast this coming weekend with that low pressure as it dives out of the Dakotas down through Arkansas, and it brings some Gulf moisture, generally half an inch. But the other area of precipitation is going to be along the west coast, where we see those higher rainfall amounts for Washington State and Oregon. In terms of that precipitation, by the time we get to Monday morning, we could see widespread 2 to 4 inches across the west coast of Washington, even into northwestern Oregon. You could be in on that heavy rainfall. Heaviest amounts, again, are going to be up in British Columbia and in those higher elevations. It's going to fall in the term of snowfall, where we could see several feet accumulating across that part of the country. Speaking of snowfall, there's that map there showing those yellows and those whites, several feet of snow for those higher mountain ranges of British Columbia. Even as we make our way into Alberta, those higher mountains of the Rockies, we've seen significant snowfall. The snowfall that's going to fall here across Saskatchewan on our Thursday into our Friday before it dives down into the Dakotas could bring a few centimeters of snow. And then with that departing system that's bringing rain into the northeast for our Thursday, on the backside in those higher elevations of northern New York, we could see a few areas turning over to some snow, but the main snows will be across parts of eastern Quebec, where the colder air is more prevalent. But looking here across parts of Saskatchewan, especially into southeastern Saskatchewan, we could see a few centimeters of snow, but most areas generally 1 to 2 centimeters. But as we go into southeastern Yukon and southern Nunavut province, we could see snowfall there accumulating 2 to 5 centimeters by the time we get to our Monday morning. And it is Thursday, so the U.S. Agricultural Department has issued its latest drought monitor, and we still have a significant area here across the Ohio Valley experiencing drought conditions, though that has improved here across parts of Kentucky and Tennessee, where you saw several inches of rain over the last 2 weeks. Across the Central Plains through the Dakotas, we don't really have much in the way of drought conditions. We have good signs here across Texas. Those heavy rains recently have helped improve those drought conditions for you. And as we get into the Four Corners region, though, we still have areas of severe and extreme drought. Extreme drought conditions do exist across the Northeast, parts of Maine and New Hampshire. And so the 8 to 14 day outlook for the United States from the Climate Prediction Center calls for most of the United States to be above normal in temperature for the period November 6th through the 12th. And if you remember, we saw that system moving onshore by about Thursday or Friday of next week. That's going to cause a trough in the west and ridging and southerly winds across the Central Plains and eastern parts of the United States leading to those above normal temperatures during this time period. Counterpart to that is we're really not going to see much in the way of precipitation. Much of the country is expected to have below normal precipitation during this time period, the exception being the Pacific Northwest with that trough moving in and those atmospheric rivers. And as that jet stream moves across the northern tier and then dives into the northeast, bringing that storm track into the northeast, we could see rainy and wet conditions across the north during the second week of November. And then across Florida with those afterstorms, we're going to have a little more instability across the Gulf. Nothing tropical in nature, but we will have an increased chance of rainfall across that part of the country. Well, we thank you for joining us here at the Weather Farm. If you're new to the channel, go ahead and like, subscribe down there. Hit that bell notification icon so that when we go live, you can be notified of new videos and new content. We hope that you have a great day, and we will see you soon.